There is a very infamous story in my family. It's a let me say it's a quite infamous story, but the story is this. You know, my father, it is said, was a very bright person. Those who went to school with him say he was a very bright person. So one time during his days in school, uh, he, because of course he was bright, he received a letter that asked him to, that was inviting him, actually, not asked him, it was inviting him to Ohio State University in the US as an exchange student. There was an exchange student program that the government, through the Ministry of Education that time, was doing for bright students. So my father happened to be one of the bright students who was invited to Ohio State University to do an exchange program, present himself, prepare documentation so that he could fly out to the US for that exchange program. So the story goes that my grandfather, of course, he, as a father, was very excited and prepared his son to go to Jogoo House. I think that's where the Ministry of Education offices were, and they still are, I believe. So, yes, so they took their journey from Western Kenya. My grandfather bought tickets. He bought train tickets to Nairobi. So they took the journey, father and son took the journey from Western Kenya to Nairobi to Jogoo House. Of course, my grandfather, being a very proud father, did everything in his power to ensure that his son was not going to miss this opportunity. He prepared the documentation, he did everything, and of course now presented himself and his son after an overnight journey at Jogoo House in Nairobi. So they went to the relevant office. When they arrived in the office, my grandfather presented the documents and of course gave the reason why he was there with his son, of course with a lot of hope in his son and with a lot of expectations in him. So he waited for feedback in the same office, of course, waiting. And after a short time, of course, someone came out with a list, and to my grandfather's utter shock, my father's disappointment, and to everyone's dismay in the family, my father's name had been switched. So maybe my father's destiny had been switched. But something changed in my father. I think what I heard, the stories I heard after, of course, we were born, were very different from what I saw. I think, and this story I heard from my father. He himself told me, my father, before he died, there was a tradition we used to do with him, and he had been struck by diabetes, and his eyes were failing. He couldn't read a newspaper, but he loved newspapers. So every Sunday in the morning, we would go get newspapers and read to him, because he loved some particular column by a very famous columnist that time. And I will read the newspapers to him. So he told me this story one time after I read the newspaper to him. And of course, he told me so many other stories, but this one sticks out because it seems to have lived with him throughout his life, and he seemed to have grown very, very pessimistic about human beings. Maybe you are pessimistic about human beings. Maybe you have a right to be pessimistic about human beings. I don't know. But we all have a story to tell. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I also have a story to tell. Let's wait and see.